lumped up with RockerMike and Rob Rossi. I'm getting lumped up with RockerMike and Rob Rossi. Well, I'm lumped up, but I'm okay. It's gonna get lumped up anyway. You better call back the posse. Just getting lumped up with RockerMike and Rob Rossi. Getting lumped up with RockerMike and Rob Rossi.
Thank you, everybody. Welcome to another episode of RockerMike and Rob Presents. Today we have a very special guest. We have Greg Stackhouse Prevost. He is the original founding member, singer, songwriter for the Chesterfield Kings. He also has a brand new autobiography out that we're going to talk about called On the Street, I Met a Dog. And he also has 3 solo albums under his belt and a brand new CD called Vintage Violence, Barbaric, Crude, and Primitive, 1975 through 79. It's all pre-Chesterfield Kings material. How you doing, Greg?
Like, good. What's happening?
Not much, man. Not much. Glad you're here, man. This has been a long time coming.
Right on. Well, hey, Rob, how's it going?
I'm pretty good, man. I'm just excited to have you on the show, and Mike's going to ask you a few questions, and let's just have a good time, and let's talk about this great book that you wrote.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Now, I'm going to just jump right in, Greg. I've known you for a while, a few years on Facebook, and we talk a lot. And I just want to say right off the bat, you know, you're like one of these guys that's like a true rock and roll fan. You're like a person that you're like a dinosaur. I mean that in the best way. Okay, because it's like so rare that you find somebody that knows so much about music that you do, and also managed to have this incredible career. A lot of people they ask me, Mike, RockerMike, how do you know so much about music? Well, I've loved it all my life, but you loved it, you lived it, and I've learned a lot from you. So I just really want to thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me on here. I was looking forward to this,
Yeah, cool. Now, you grew up in Rochester, New York. You were born in 1955. I hope you don't mind me saying that.
No, that's okay. It's in the book.
It's in the book anyway, right?
How fucking old I am.
It doesn't matter. It's just a number. 55 is a great year because technically, that's what people say is the official year of the birth of rock and roll. That's always debatable, but we'll just go with that for now. We've had many conversations over the year about music, and one thing that always stuck out with me that you had said is that you kind of like everything from 1955 or so to 73, and everything after that, you kind of like here and there. So right. Why is that? What is it about that like 18, 19 year period that is so great?
Well, it all actually, I'll go up to 75,
Okay.
Because there's stuff that you can, but then after that, you have to look for stuff, because in 75, everything turned to shit, Well, to me, it did.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like the Sex Pistols and the Ramones and everything that happened then, that picked things up,
Right.
And because I think at that time, everything started to turn into like the Doobie Brothers and all this, I mean, I don't want to say that because if you listen to them now, they actually sound good compared to the shit that's around. But at the time, I didn't like the Marshall Tucker and all that Southern rock crap. But, you hear it now, it's not bad. And don't get me wrong about Southern rock, because I love the Allman Brothers and all that kind of stuff. But music got really lame and like sterile, and then the Sex Pistols, well, actually Ramones, and then the Sex Pistols, and then all that stuff. And it was great until about 78. And then it started turning into shit, the new wave and all that kind of crap. And then that's when punk turned into like shit,
Well,
and
it was like punk light.
Yeah, it was like, I love the first Clash album. I mean, I know a lot of people like the later stuff, but I just didn't fucking like the Casbah and all that shit, that TV garbage. And I just couldn't, I couldn't get into it, and so I feel that all that stuff just fell apart. And then the Sex Pistols, they still maintain their cool because they broke up before they That they wouldn't.
Well, they could suck, right?
Right, yeah, and the Ramones hung on. I mean, I like the Ramones. Well, obviously, I don't want to get into that, but like they got a little bit tedious, you know. But I love Dee Dee's stuff, you know, and when he did like Warthog and all that stuff, that was really kick-ass stuff, you know. But anyways, after that, it's kind of like you got to look for stuff, you know. And then I like Black Flag and all that stuff in the '80s. That was good music to me, you know, all that hardcore '80s stuff. That was good. But then mainstream music was this shit, you know.
Oh, in the '80s, definitely.
Yeah, '80s and '90s. Then once they got into all that, like the drum sound where they gate the drums and they separate them, and they got those microphones and all this shit. And then digital nowadays, it's just a fucking joke, you know.
It's terrible.
It's really a shame that you have like, I guess it's like 2 generations now that just don't even know what good music is to me. I mean, I just, you know, I listen to what like, you know, my kids listen to and stuff. I'll check it out. It's all sounding the same.
Yeah. It's like, it's almost like even like a lot of people that, you know, allegedly are whatever they claim to be rock and roll or whatever. If you listen to what they're doing, it's the same sterile shit. Everybody has the same like kind of cookie cutter bullshit,
right? You
know, digital. Okay, they have some digital guy that's some, you know, engineer. I don't even call them fucking engineers because they don't know how to fucking engineer going to the men's room, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And they do this stuff where it's like, okay, well, the drums are going to sound like this, and they don't know how to do real music because they never mic'd the drum setup the way, you know,
properly.
Yeah, the way Jeff Emmerich did the Beatles, or like, you know, Dave Hassinger did the Stones stuff. And it's like, you know, I mean, I know guys still nowadays that are doing that, and there are people that are great, but they are different and they're not part of that whole trip, you know?
Right.
And I just find like, no matter how good somebody might be, they do these songs and it just sounds like, okay, the vocals sound audio tuned, or that they tune it up. So they have all these devices that make it in key and all that shit. And it just sounds fake, you know? It's like,
yeah.
You know, and nobody does like a double, you know, if somebody does a harmony, they just double it. They don't even do it twice. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, and even some old school people, like I happen to be listening to Blondie recently. And it was an album that came out about 10 years ago with a song called Mother on it. It's about Andy Warhol. And I'm listening to it, and I never noticed it before. I've had the album for 10 years and probably listened to it about 4 times. But you know, she's auto-tuned.
Yeah, I hate that.
And I'm kind of like, you know, this is a girl that had a fantastic voice, probably still does to some capacity. Why are you doing that?
Well, you know what it is too. It's like a lot of the times, I don't want to say this, but people like, let's say like Keith Richards, for example. You know how I like Keith and stuff.
Of course.
But like, he gets these guys that are his yes men, and they go, well, Keith, you know, you got to sound like this and blah, blah, blah. And so then, you know, instead of just saying, oh, I'm going to just play, you know, country blues by myself, you know, it's like, no, they have to make it so it's like this irritating sound that they put in, and you can't turn the records up anymore, you know, you know, because the levels are so high when they master it, that it's one big line. There's no space, there's no depth, there's no there's no kind of, you know, anything in there where you can turn up the music, where you can hear the bass, and that, you know, you turn up the old records and stuff, you can crank the low end and everything. You can't do that now.
No, because it's all one level, kind of, right?
And everybody wants to, like, you know, I remember like somebody saying, well, you know, if you want to get on the radio, you got to have your mastered so it sounds like this, and it just sounds like a big fucking brick, you know, a big loud bunch of shit. You know what I mean? I fucking hate that. There's like
I hear you.
There's no air or space in the song. You know, you listen to like, you know, anything that was from the 70s and, you know, beyond that. And I don't know, it just sounds great. And why do people like all that? Okay, I don't want to say the Beatles because everybody fucking likes the Beatles. And, you know, why does everybody like them? Because they sound good. How come these fucking morons don't want to sound like them when they record their stuff, you know?
I mean, you know, George Martin. There's no one else like him. You know, why would you not look back and say, hey, you know, why do they sound so good? Let's try to do what they did. You know, some bands did kind of do stuff like that. Like, you know, the White Stripes, for instance, would, you know, Jack White would search out like old studios to try to get an analog kind of sound, right? Well,
there still are guys out there that have integrity and they want do that. And
Yeah.
I'm generalizing when I'm saying everybody. I'm just saying that.
Of course.
So many times you see these guys going, "Oh yeah, we're fucking Beatles." Like, yeah, okay, and then you listen to it, it's this fucking auto-tune crap vocals,
Yeah.
this shitty digital drums that all sound like a bunch of fucking ash cans,
I know.
But,
You mentioned Richards, okay, and it's obvious that the Rolling Stones were such a huge influence on you, whether it was the music or just your style. You always kind of looked like, to me, your style was, Keith Richards on steroids. Okay. And I actually get, figured Johnny Thunders was kind of in that category too. But, not only is the Stones so big, though, for you and your sound, but a lot of the proto-punk bands like the New York Dolls, the Stooges, the MC5, you could hear that all in a lot of the Chesterfield Kings and even some of the solo stuff that you've come out with, okay? Garage rock, which is, I guess you would say, anywhere from 66 to about 70 or so, right? Mm-hmm. That was something that was so influential to you too. Other than the obvious, like the Dolls and the Stones and the Stooges, what are some of these garage rock bands that really, really influenced you?
Yeah, that's really hard to say because I didn't really, when I was hearing these bands back then, they're just top 40 bands, like,
right.
Or local bands like The Herd, which I like all the local groups because it was more like close to home and I could actually see some of those groups live easily. And then, I don't know, there's just so many things that came out now, the Elevators, the Chocolate Watch Band, the Seeds,
right.
Stand-Ups, all those groups that I hear on the radio. Well, actually, mainstream radio wouldn't play things like the Elevators, but this channel called WSAY would play all the stuff like the Magic Mushrooms and the Sons of Adam and all these groups that nobody else would play. And I would listen to that all the time to find out about these bands. Sometimes you couldn't find the records though back then because, you'd go into a store and look for like the Magic Mushrooms and they'd say, "What the fuck are you talking about?"
Just so people understand the context of what you're saying, you're talking about in the 60s at the time when this stuff was out.
Right. 66, 65, 66, 67. Those are the great years.
So many of these bands that you just mentioned, like Sons of Adam, they were kind of like underground bands in a sense.
Maybe not in the, nationally they might have been. They were on Decca,
right.
But they were like big in, the California area, but around anywhere else it's like, well, and even then it wasn't like they were like this mega thing where unless the right radio station picked it up, like the Seeds, Pushing Too Hard just flew across the United States and got, everybody didn't have the chance to get that break, but
yeah. And then sometimes you would have two versions of the same song, like Gloria, Shadows of Night, and Van Morrison's Them, going at the same time. I've had to explain that to a lot of people on podcasts over the last few years. It's hard to get that concept now, but it definitely existed at that time.
Yeah, you could have two, like the Kinks doing Dandy, and then Herman's Hermits actually got a hit with it.
That's right. They did do that. Yeah.
And Ray wrote it, but then their version got kind of slumped, and then Herman's Hermits had this big hit, and they're pretty, they're pretty lame. But I mean, I like some of the records, but they're lame,
Yeah. I mean, like Henry VIII, I like, and I probably like it because like the Ramones kind of lifted, second verse same as the first, that kind of thing.
Yeah, they totally like stole that whole trip.
Exactly. Now, in the early days of the Chesterfield Kings, I would say, late 70s into the early 80s, you guys had, I guess you could call it a theme or a mantra, a rule in the band that you were keeping everything 1966. Okay, and you mentioned this in your book, and I love this. Okay, I love this. Tell us what you were thinking by doing that. What was that?
The actual total 66 thing. I mean, I was thinking about it like in the 70s, but we were more like a bunch of young hippie guys. Me and Rick and Doug and Bob Ames. It was like the original four guys, and then we went to a couple other guys, but like. We just guys with like mustaches and long hair and bell bottoms and all that, the whole look. I mean, but I like being a hippie. I liked it. It was. I'm not calling myself a hippie, but like, it was just being free to be yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
and I didn't fucking care about any of that stuff. And then when punk came along, like everybody else, I mean, not everybody else, a few of us, I mean, I cut my hair, you know, which I wouldn't have done, you know, but then I did it, and then I grew my hair back out and all that shit. You know that in the book.
Yeah.
But then doing the band thing was kind of like, well, punk was like getting lame, and then it started going downhill, and then I started getting the idea to do this total 1966 thing where it's like the peak of when everybody was starting to look cool or whatever in that period, because before that, everybody had short hair and ties and all that shit like their fathers, you know.
Kind of like the Beach Boys kind of look.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Beach Boys, but like all the bands are like tough, kick-ass bands. You hear these records, and then these guys are wearing ties and they got short hair, and that's like 65. And then they got turned on to the Stones and Yardbirds, and they started, or even better yet, the Pretty Things, because they had real long hair for that time, you know. And then everybody started trying to look like that, and that was my whole idea. And then it was not an easy thing to do, and it was kind of like, well, you totally have to pretend. Not, I don't want. No, it wasn't even pretending. It was just like, I don't want to say pretending because that's fucking lame. We weren't pretending. We were there, you know. And they said, you know, if you like Aerosmith, it's great, but just don't talk about it. Just do your thing. You just gotta stay in this one line. You gotta watch, you know, tell everybody you watch Get Smart and all this shit, you know. And
yeah, I mean, it wasn't just, you know, the way you explained it in the book. It wasn't just the music of '66 that time. You had to watch, like you say, TV shows and live it like it was 1966.
Right, and it was like culture.
Crazy.
And it actually worked because the group of us that did that, you know, once the band did, then everybody's girlfriends, you know, my wife Carol, she's got her shorty skirt and all that stuff, and all her girlfriends, and Rick's wife Sandy, and you know, it's just like, and then it started to get into like this, I don't know what you want to call it, but in Rochester at Scourge's, everybody started doing that whole trip when we play, you know, and then all of a sudden it's like it starts going on everywhere else, you know, you get in New York and LA, and then it just kind of turned into this really cool thing that worked for a couple of years before it disappeared, like everything does, you know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, the Chesterfield Kings, in my opinion, went through different phases. Okay. And the band lasted technically from 79 to 2011.
Actually, it was 78 to technically 1978 is when we started. And technically the last show ever was 2009. And then in 2011 or whatever you want to call it, that's when I actually said, fuck this. This is bullshit. I'm done.
Call it a day. Right. And so many ups and downs in those years. Okay. You describe it all in your book. And really, I mean, your book is so detailed. It's amazing. It's like really getting into your mind, you know? And that's a good thing. And you know, there was so much chaos in the recording, the way you describe it, and at live shows, you know. I just want to ask you, is there one Chesterfield Kings record that kind of really represents the sound of the band and what they were about as a live show? Did you ever nail it?
It's hard because it's actually like, I'd say almost 14 bands between guys coming and going.
Yeah.
You know, I think it was like, I don't know, 20 guys were in the band. It went over the 30 whatever years it was. We were around too long, technically. Like, you know, you get in debt and shit like that, and then you can't get out of it, and then you gotta do this. Then all of a sudden something comes up and it works again. But anyways, to get back to you're saying a particular version of the band that was the live band that was
like you know, is there one studio album, for instance, that you feel, you know, really you nailed it as far as what the band was about, even at that time?
Let's Go Get Stoned, I think, was the best. I still like it, and it nailed that band, and that it was the, I don't know.
It's my favorite, by the way, Greg.
Was it? And yeah, I love the band. That was my favorite band. That the Paul Rocco on guitar and Brett on drums, and it was just like, I don't know. We were like, actually, there's three versions of the band where it was like something. The first, you know, their first Here Are the Chesterfield Kings band. And we had this whole trip going, that whole 66 thing, and that was really cool. But then the Rocco thing, we just kind of turned into like a real Stooges, whatever. We were our own thing, and we just became a real rock and roll band at that point. you know, and we could go and we play and we smash up the clubs and all that stuff. And it was fun. It was at that point in my life, I didn't fucking care about getting or any, I mean, I don't either, but I mean, like back then I didn't care if somebody fucking hit me with it or nothing. I would fight, you know, I didn't care. It was like, yeah, well, fuck the whole attitude of that band, you know?
I mean, you really had a Iggy Pop kind of thing going on.
Yeah, it was just like we just became this thing, and then I became more, you know, I don't want to say violent, but like, you know, when you're on stage, I'm not the same nice person, you know.
Right. I've seen you several times. I know exactly how you get. You know, you mentioned in the book about the live shows and how it got. Okay, smashing the ceilings and you know, smashing mic stands and, you know, all that. And sometimes they would, you know, you guys wouldn't even they would deduct that shit from your pay, right?
Yeah, that was the bad part. And then guys in the band would be pissed at me because, well, it's like everybody liked the idea of being called like, yeah, these guys are badass, outlaw, fucking all this shit. And then, but then like, oh, we're fucking wrecking the place, and you know, we're not making money.
Have it both ways.
You got to do one or the other, you know. And then, and at that point in my life, I didn't want to play out anymore. So I go, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to fucking smash these places to pieces, get thrown out, and never play there again. But then they kept booking us again, and so I couldn't get out of it.
Oh man. Well, one thing that you did off and on, especially in the early years, is you ran a fanzine called Future, and you know, just for our younger listeners of the internet generation that don't know what a fanzine is, okay, maybe you could tell us about this, Greg, because it's fascinating. I mean, you interviewed some people like Ray Davies and Captain Beefheart. How'd you get all that going and get it off the ground and keep it going?
You mean the magazine, or I'm not sure.
The magazine.
Well, it started out as a flyer, or you want to call it, or a newsletter, and it was like a 4-pager. And I'd go over to the library by the House of Guitars where I worked, and I'd just make up a 4-page thing full of them, and I'd give them to like people who anybody that bought a Frank Zappa record or a Stooges or Stones or any kind of cool record, I just give it to them, you know. And then I started corresponding. Well, I was already corresponding with people like Greg Shaw and other people that were into the same music, and you just send your stuff around to your friends, and then they're doing a similar thing, and then it turned into like a fanzine where it's actually like a primitive magazine, and you know, it's like, it's not professional, but it's like, you know, your own thing. And I did it like hand drawn and handwritten and all that stuff the first couple issues, and then I was using a typewriter, and I got all technical, and my sister threw out her typewriter, and it was like one of them electric ones with the fancy letters on it and all that shit. So that was like a big deal, you know, back then, having a typewriter. Wow, you know.
Yeah.
And I just got the pictures out, and you know, I go over to the library and scan pictures off of my records or my magazines, and then cut the picture out and tape it on, and you know, then run it, you know, with
cut and paste kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I did that up to even Out of Sight. The third Out of Sight, the one that's on Sundays, was the one at Nancy Sinatra. I even did that then. It was before computers, you know.
Yeah.
People don't understand. They're like, wow, you didn't use PageMaker or Quark Express. And it's like, no.
It didn't exist. I mean, I remember getting fanzines of, I used to get one. It was an Alice Cooper fanzine called Sick Things. And and that one actually, it kind of crossed over into the internet after a while. It
everybody
had
does,
a website.
you know?
I don't even know if they have it anymore. I don't think so.
Yeah, they do. I think it's still on. They still have a thing called Sick Thing. I think they have a Facebook page or something.
Oh, okay. I know it was Brian, Alice's assistant, that ran it, or at least ran the website, if I remember right.
Maybe it's not the same thing, but maybe it is. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd have to look into it. I haven't thought about that in a while. But you know, you managed to snag some good interviews. I mean, you got to be friends with Ray Davies from the Kings, and you also interviewed Captain Beefheart. Rob's a big Captain Beefheart fan.
Yeah, Captain Beefheart's great, man.
I love
How'd you manage that?
He's so great. Well, it wasn't hard to do things like that back then, because when somebody came to town, they just played a bar, or he played at this place called the Red Creek, which I played there a bunch of times, and I used to go there all the time because, you know, Savoy Brown would be there. And, you know, a lot of people were, you know, just really great. I don't know, you know, everybody would stop there when they played in the area, you know. And anyways, he was doing the show there. And then I would just go there and say, where, you know, I'd know somebody that worked there, and they'd say, oh, he's out in the back, you know, he's outside. And you just walk up to him and, hey, how's it going, man? You know, and it was that easy back then, you know, and nobody was, I never ran into anybody that, or anything where they would say, oh, I don't want to talk, you know. Everybody I ran into just was pretty cool, you know. I mean, not like now, you know. I mean, I'm not talking like Billy Joel or something, that fucking asshole, you know. Well, I can't say that, right?
No, you could say it on this show. You could say it on this show because I bash Billy Joel and fucking Bruce Springsteen all the fucking time. Don't worry about it.
But yeah, I don't want to say it about him, but he was I won't get into that, but he was a jerk. You know, when I met him, he was an asshole, and it wasn't on purpose that I met him. It's just like he was in the store and he was a real prick, you know.
Yeah. I definitely get it. I definitely get it.
I mean, for the years, I never met all the people that I ran into or whatever, and you know, him and that Elvis Costello guy was two of his biggest fucking assholes.
Oh yeah,
but other than that, you know, everybody else I've ever ran into.
Yeah. Speaking about running into people, okay, you know, one thing that cracked me up in your book, okay, I'm sure everybody else is going to think it's funny too.
You know who else is a dick?
Oh, who?
John Mellencamp is a fucking dick. He stole my joint in front of Urban Plaza.
You've told me that story. That's freaking funny. Was that outside Irving Plaza or something?
Yeah, I was smoking a joint, and this guy come up, and I get, oh man, you're John Mellencamp. And he looks at me, yeah. And he said, what are you doing? That's some smoke. You want some of this joint? He took a hit, and then he kept walking. And I thought maybe he's going to offer me ticket because he was playing. No, the motherfucker stole my joint.
He just walked away with his weed.
Yeah. I was like, fuck.
Oh, God. That's a good one, Rob. That's really funny. So what I was gonna say is one thing that amazed me in the book, and I found it funny, is you know, whenever you were gonna meet somebody, you always had a stack of records from that person to get signed. Yeah, I mean, you know, that goes back to what I was saying, man. Is you're like this ultimate rock and roll fan, and you kept that mentality, you know, all your life. And so when you would meet these people that you admired, you idolized in some way, you know, you were like, can you please sign my record collection of all your shit? You know, it's great.
Yeah, most guys were cool, you know, and then except for when the funniest one was Ginger Baker.
Yes, I was going to bring that up about the pens.
He was like really cool, and he's like smoking his pipe. I mean, I don't know what he had in it, but it's like this. It kept burning my eyes, you know. This tobacco was like, man, it was like my eyes were watering. Yeah. And he's really cool, and he's like, yeah, well, what do you want, you know? And then he signed all my stuff, you know, and silver marker on the black cover and all that shit, you know, like that would get somebody irritated if, you know, because like every time you get to another cover, I have to give him you got to
change colors.
Yeah, so he's like, yeah, okay, and he was cool. Then he got to like the Wheels of Fire, you know, and I wanted it on the front, you know, I wanted a black marker on the front. And he goes, no. I go, why not? He goes, because I ain't fucking gonna sign it that way. And I go, oh. I go, well, you can't do it on the front. He goes, no. He goes, well, look, you want me to sign this fucking thing or what? I go, okay. And he signs it, and he just puts his period in, you know, like bang there. Like, so there. And then I was going to ask him to do an interview for the magazine. I go, oh, that ain't going to work. So,
yeah, right. That was your intention anyway, to ask for the interview. But after that, you said, forget it.
After the period, when he put that period in at the end, like there, you know, like poked you in the eye or something, you know, it was like, and I go, okay. And then he's smoking his pipe, and it was just like, I don't know, it was funny. It was a good story anyway.
That's cool. And that was at House of Guitars, right?
Yeah, he was doing a drum clinic, and it was great because he's doing all this stuff, and I'm going, wow, he sets his drums up really crazy, and he's doing all this fucking crazy rhythm. You know, I mean, when you hear like "Sunshine of Your Love," he's playing the rhythm of the song. He's not even playing you know what I mean? Like, he's playing a rhythm. He's not even playing like what a normal drummer would play. He's doing like this great. I don't know what it was. He was phenomenal. You know,
he was like jazz trained and everything, right?
Love the guy and love the guy, you know.
Yeah.
And then he played on Armin. You know Armin Schauberg, right?
Yes, yes. House
Well,
of Guitars.
Armin was recording a record at the time, and Ginger, he played on a song. I don't know whatever happened to that. I don't know what happened to the tape, but Armin was working on an album that never came out at the time.
Yeah.
And he did a song with him after that too. But I'm just saying that now because it's not known anywhere. But someday maybe Armin will find the tape, you know.
Right. Put it out. Yeah. That's cool. Now, you know, when you put the end to the Chesterfield Kings in like 2011, the impression that I got in the book is that you were very relieved and very happy to really be on your own. And by 2012, you started recording under the name of Greg Stackhouse Prevost.
Actually, my name's pronounced Prevost. As like
Prevost. I apologize.
Okay.
Prevost. I guess I should get that right. Okay. But what's the Stackhouse reference? Just so people know.
Well, I like Sonny Boy Williams and stuff, and he had a guitar player, and his last name was Stackhouse, Houston Stackhouse. I go, what a fucking cool name. I wish my name was Houston Stackhouse, you know.
It's a great name.
I mean, that's a fucking cool name. So I'm like, okay, well, some people will get it and some people won't. And I mean, that was the thing. And I didn't want this to be Greg Prevost because, oh, well, that sounds kind of boring, you know. So I had to kind of reinvent myself anyway. So that kind of did it, you know, or whatever. Right. I mean, I think it worked.
It's a great name. It is.
Thanks.
Yeah. Now, Mississippi Murderer, your first solo album, was released in 2013. It's really, you know, I think it's one of the best albums in the last, 10 years. Absolutely. And it's really different than what you were doing with the Kings. Where was your head at when you were making this record? I mean, you seemed very excited to finally be on your own and be recording the way you wanted to. And, where were you at mentally wise with that?
Actually, I'll take a step back, man. The band wasn't really a band anymore. It was just called that. And it was like, we're not playing out. We don't do nothing. I fucking hate what we're doing. We're so redundant. We would never practice, right? And then we'd go, oh, we're going to do a show. And then we're going to do the same fucking 15 or 20 songs where it was. And after a while, it's like, okay, I'm not talking, blah, blah, blah. Same, I could tell you the set list in my head if we did it so many times. It's like really boring. And then at that point, it was like, nobody's on the same page. And then once I got out of the band, I didn't want to do music anymore. I said, I was done with it. It's like, screw this. And then I just I was working on that Stones book, at that time, at the same time I was doing that, and I had to finish that. So like I had to figure out all this shit that Keith Richards was playing on the guitar. So like I started doing all this open tuning crap and figuring out Parachute Woman and what he did and all that stuff and where the capos were on it. And then I started playing. I go, hey, I'm starting to get back into playing again because that's what I did back in the 70s before I decided to be like an Iggy guy or James Brown or whatever you want to call it in the band, because I didn't want to play guitar in a band because then you look like the Beatles or something. I didn't want to do that, So anyways, I know I'm rambling, but
no, that's fine.
Anyways, I got back into that. I didn't really get into it until I started playing golf again, and I seen this guy in a golf course, and he's like, and here you can't play golf in the winter because it's shit, And this guy's going, hey, I play guitar during the winter. I just sit around the house, and I go, oh, hey, that's a good idea. So then I started doing that. Then I just started learning as many old blues songs that I could that I liked playing, and then they started drifting into like my own original things, and then I did that single, that Mr. Charlie record. I don't know if you ever heard that.
I haven't, but you did mention it that in the book around 2012, right?
Yeah, and that I did that. It was 2011. I don't remember what year it was. Yeah, it's in the book. I don't know. And so I did those two songs, and I taped it, and I sent it to my friend Enric in Spain, and Enric Bosser, and he was in this band called the Meows, and they're like the Dead Boys and the Stooges, and we played with them in the 90s and all that. And he has this great label, Penniman Records, and I wasn't thinking about getting on his label or nothing. I just sent it to him because he's my friend, and I said, hey, what do you think? He goes, hey, I like this. I'll put it out as a single, blah, blah, blah. One thing led to another, and he goes, oh, I could hear you playing electric and this and that, and it would sound like the Stones and blah, blah, blah. So anyways, I know I'm rambling again, but
not at all. We love it, Greg.
I'm trying to lead up to where I was at that point. And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna fucking go electric, and then I hooked up with my friend Zachary Koch, and I'm still playing with him. I'm sure you've seen that on the that video thing.
Yeah.
He's on my first couple albums, and he was in St. Philip's Escalator, and then he hooked me up with Alex, this guy Alex Patrick, who's this brilliant genius young guy and phenomenal guitar player, and he's a great engineer. He was this young guy who was like 19 when I met him. I'm like, really, a 19-year-old? You're fucking kidding me. How is he gonna know of this? And then he starts talking about the Velvet Underground, the Dolls and Stooges.
Yeah.
He knows all this stuff, and he knows how to play like Segovia. He's a jazz guitar player. He's a genius.
Yeah.
He can play like Jimmy Page too, So anyways, he figured out the whole way to record like the way they did in the 60s, the Beatles. It's not. I go, how'd you figure this shit out? And he goes, I read a lot of books and this and that. And so anyways, we started recording. I go, man, I have to fucking explain nothing. He just records it and sounds like get your yayas up. It sounds like the Stones, the last couple of Stones albums on Decca. I'm like, okay, this is gonna work, and
that's the sound you were looking for.
Yeah, and I missed the sound that we did with the Let's Go Get Stoned era band in the 90s, and we did that other blues album right after that, the Drunk on Muddy Waters. And I love that whole thing where there's slide and electric, and we didn't do that because the guys we had after that were not into that, these other guys in between. And then when Paul Morbido got in the band, this guy's fucking brilliant, genius guitar player. I love this guy, and I just played with him, and he's like one of my favorite guys and a great guitar player. And but at that time we were a 4-piece, so we couldn't do the slide, all that stuff. We couldn't do it as a 4-piece in the last era of the band. And then we kind of got into that 60s rut because that's what give the people what they want shit, and
yeah.
We kind of got back into that, and I liked it and stuff for a while, but then you get tired of doing the same stuff that you already, it was like a recycling thing again, but anyways, keep a long story short, and I went back to that vibe because I really wanted to do that again, and I missed that sound. So that's what that album, The Mississippi Murder, was kind of like that. And I just played all the guitars on. I played all I played all the parts. Yeah. I think Alex played bass and Zach played drums, and it was just the starting over again,
Yeah, well, I agree. It was like a rebirth in a way of what you were doing. Back in 2003, and I've mentioned this to you before when we talked. I actually met you at the Virgin Megastore.
Yeah.
I know you said you don't remember, and that's fine. You met a million people in your life.
I do, and I don't. And it's like I think I do, and that was such a fucked up show, or whatever it was. It was weird,
Well, let me tell you, when I was still working, and I was working in the city, okay, and I was living in Queens, and I kind of ducked out of work early that day, and I went home and changed and went back into the city because this was in the Times Square store, and I got there before anybody, and then you guys came in with Little Steven, and if I remember right, and you were kind of wandering around, okay, like in the look. I guess you were looking at CDs or whatever, and I recognized it, and I started talking to you. You had that I mean, you had that like red shirt on, red and black shirt on. And one thing I asked you, okay, because, you at that point, that was like 2003. Like, I think it was 2003, 2004. But you were, you were signed to Wicked Cool, and, you had put out the Mind Bending Sounds, and then Psychedelic Sunrise would come out not too long after that. I had asked you straight out, what do you have coming out? Okay. Because I didn't know if you were going to be doing more than one record with Wicked Cool or what. And you kind of shocked me. You said, well, I'm working on a book. And I said, really? What is it? It's a book on the Rolling Stones. And I said, okay, and you said, yeah, about their, basically their instruments. Okay. So you came out with a book, and 10 years later it came out. I know you worked on it for a long time.
It was fucking horrible.
Yeah. It was called Rolling Stones Gear. Okay. And I have this book. It's a fascinating book. The pictures are unbelievable. I mean, to me, it's like you got Bill Wyman's book, which is probably the best in anything to do with the Stones memorabilia and things like that. And then your book is right under that, in my opinion. Okay.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. And, how'd you get that going? How hard was that to do?
It was, I don't know. It was just fucked up. It was like, I was so heavy into the Stones at the time that I wanted to do a book. So like I was fucking around with the idea of doing like a history thing, right? Then all of a sudden Bill Wyman's book came out. Like, well, fuck that. That's done.
It was around the same time. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I started doing it and like going, well, nobody's going to be able to top this one. And to come out with another Stones book that's doing the same thing, I'd be like, oh yeah, real cool. Who cares, And then at the same time, and at the time he had a Beatle book out on that Backbeat company, England there. And he did a Beatles thing about their instruments and stuff. And so they wanted to do Stones one, and he wasn't going to do it because of how long it takes to do a book like that. And plus the Beatles is 10 years, and that's like a fucking drop, it's nothing compared to 50 years of the Stones, right?
Right.
In 50 years, and so many different Mick Taylor and Ron Wood and all these other fucking guys that were in the Stones and Beatles, you got 4 guys and 10 years, and you can encompass that easier to, it's easier to get a grip on that. And the Stones is going to be, you're going to do a book, it's going to be twice as thick and whatever. Right. So, he's like, he didn't want to do it. And then he told me they want him to do it. I go, oh, let's fucking do it, because I'm already investing time into writing this thing that I have started and, plugging instruments into the quotient to give it a different flavor and a different edge. So it's not the same thing that Bill Wyman did,
Right.
And so that's how that started. And then it just started and it was like, it was a fucking nightmare because I'm like, okay, I kind of did my book the same way. It's like you just organized. I don't know. I have all these magazines. I don't want to get too boring,
Not at all.
But like to keep it short, I'll say I started doing it, and I started scanning all my old teen magazines and newspapers and Melody Makers and all this shit, And then I did all the pictures. And then you separate it by year, and then you print this shit out and you put it in these folders. I got about 40 of these big fucking binders with these pictures in order by day and month and all that crap. And so then that's done. Then you got to do the quotes, and I was going through every magazine and typing it in this lame thing called Apple Works or something, some shitty, shitty program. It's fucked up. You can't even use it anymore. It's so lame. It was like jumpy and it kept crashing on me. And I have like 6,000 quotes in there. And put it in order, right? So I type the date in, and then it puts it in a sequence. So then after all that's done, then you start the story up, and then it's like, oh my God, it was like horrendous. Then you have to put real quotes of people that were still alive in there, So I'd hook up with Giorgio and then God, Dave Hassinger, as many people could, that were involved with the recording or in the band, or Vashti. I got a hold of her because she did one of their songs, and just all that kind of stuff. As many people who were involved with the Stones, and then you take all this shit and put it in the same sequence, with the date that was in reference to, and then you start writing it out and all this stuff. And God, it took forever. And then after that, it was like I had to deal with an editor. It was, he's like, well, where did you get this from? And it's like, you have to prove everything to somebody because it was, they don't want to put out some stuff that's some bullshit, Now
I got to ask you, did anybody from the Stones actually see the book, and did you get a blessing from Keith Richards or anything about it?
Well, we get the Keith blessing more or less through Pierre, his guitar tech, and he we went to that one show that was in Pittsburgh in 2000. It was the Bigger Bang thing, and
Bigger Bang tour, yeah,
and that's when we hooked up and stuff. And then Keith wanted to see the first 3, like a rough draft of the first 3 chapters, and then he looked at it and he liked it and said, "Yeah, right on." And I mean, he didn't tell me that. I heard that through Pierre. So it was like, and then I don't know if they actually got the book or not. I don't really fucking care. I mean, they're big rock stars, so it's like I did it and it was done, and whether they liked it or not or read it, and I'm sure they didn't.
You'd be surprised though that this stuff makes it back to these people.
Okay. I don't know. They're beyond. I don't. I don't try to like even imagine that like, oh yeah, Keith Richards liked it. And I don't fucking care if he liked it. You know, if he did, he did. He didn't, so what? I mean,
Yeah.
he's beyond all them guys. I mean, they're all too big to give a shit, you know, and I understand that. And if I were Keith Richards, I wouldn't know how to deal with all these people bothering me and stuff. So I don't know. I never found out if they liked it or not. So maybe
and it doesn't really matter, because I'll tell you right now, it's a great companion to Bill Wyman's book, The Two Together. Great coffee table books, good read. The pictures are great. I mean, I think you did a great job with it, and if they don't know about it, well, that's their loss, right? Doesn't
no, I mean, I'm not, I don't want to sound like an asshole or
no.
I mean, if somebody said, "Oh, Keith Richards loved your book," I'd be, "Oh, fuck yeah, I'd be happy."
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm not like going, "Oh, I wonder if he liked it." Oh, Keith liked the book. I don't fucking care if anybody likes something. I mean, who gives a shit? I'm not in that groupie whatever geek mode. I mean, maybe back when I wrote the book in the beginning in 2000, whatever it was, when I started it, I'd be like, "Oh man, fucking Keith Richards, yeah." I mean, at that time, I'm like thinking, "Oh, I wonder if Keith will like it." And now it's like, I don't fucking care if anybody likes it. Who gives a shit? Right?
Definitely. Now, one thing I got to bring up is the Danny Garcia movie, Rolling Stone: The Life and Death of Brian Jones.
Love that.
Yeah, and we've become good friends with Danny. We've interviewed him a couple of times. I've hung out with him, and he's a great guy. And you contributed 2 songs to this movie. This is a movie that was about, just so people understand, it was about Brian Jones, who had left the Stones and basically was fired from the Stones and passed away about a month later, found at the bottom of his swimming pool. And there's always been a conspiracy kind of theory with this as to whether it was an accident or was he murdered or what. And this movie, Rolling Stone: The Life and Death of Brian Jones, really gets into that. So I recommend it. But tell us how you got involved with that.
Well, Danny, we all know the same people. We're all friends, and I don't know if he found me through Enric Bosser in Spain, and Enric's the label that put that out, all my stuff.
Yeah.
And I think he contacted Enric, and then we hooked up, and he said he wanted to do a couple songs. Oh, fuck yeah, I'm totally in,
Right.
It was, for me, it was like a big, honor for me to have something part of that, that kind of thing, because obviously, but yeah. And then Danny said, "Hey, I want to do a couple songs in it," and then he picked the songs for it, and that was great. I'm happy with that. I'm really thrilled to be part of that.
Now that was 2019, and you actually already had a second solo album out at that point. Universal Vagrant came out a couple of years before. That's another fantastic record. But what I really want to talk to you about is your last release, which is Songs for These Times, that came out last year in 2021. Mm-hmm. It's an album of mostly covers, right? I believe.
It's it's like a lot of, it's just songs I always liked that I wanted to do in that style. Not like, I didn't want to copy anybody. And like, I had a lot more originals that just didn't. No, I'd rather do a song that I can play that I like playing than a song that I wrote to say, well, I wrote all these songs. Who fucking cares? Nobody wants to hear some boring song if it's not done right, And the songs I picked were more electric slanted than that. So yeah, well, get back to what you were saying. It's a lot of covers and some originals, and I don't know. It was one of those things that was like, well, I'd rather do like a Rocky Erickson song and do it like a totally different way. Not totally different, keep the essence, but
yeah, kind of your take on it.
Yeah, do it. I do my own like style or whatever, and try not to, the old band that I was in. Well, old band, Chesterfield Kings. Like, I'd carbon copy stuff. I'd say, oh, I want it to sound just like a Street Fighting Man when we did it. It sounded as close as possible. And now if I do a song, it's like I try to make it as different as possible. And if it's an electric song, I try to totally reconstruct it in a different way acoustically.
Right.
Like that album or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a great. I mean, all 3 of your solo records are probably some of the best stuff you've put out, in my opinion.
Oh, thank you.
I'm
happy with how things are going with that, and it's just so much easier to just not have to deal with a band and all that shit, and whining and politics and crap and record
Yeah.
companies and, you know.
You play things your own way in your own time and however you want to do it, right?
Yeah, and I don't have to play out and fucking tour. I hated touring. It's a bunch of shit. You know, it's just like, I mean, a lot of people like that. A lot of guys in bands like, touring, yeah, rocking out and all this stuff. And then you're sleeping in a suitcase and you're eating fucking bread and apples and all this shit. You know what I mean? It's just, it's not fun for me. It's like,
Yeah.
And I'm nervous and I get anxiety when I go in front of people and all that shit. And I always did.
Yeah,
But,
yeah. I mean, and that's common. I've talked to many people that, you know, perform for decades and still get nervous when they go on.
yeah, it's stressful. And then for me, it's like once I'm on the stage or in front of people, it's okay. But getting to that from point, you know, getting there, it's like as it gets closer, you know, I can't sleep. Stuff. I wake up and I can't figure out what's wrong. It's like, because I'm getting nervous about doing this shit, you know?
Yeah.
So anyways, I hate playing out. I mean, I'll do it. I mean, I just did that thing at the store, you know, with the guys. But that was making me nervous too, you know, and it was supposed to be a 5-piece, by the way. Ryan,
one of them didn't show or something, right? Or
his wife got COVID, and then his kids did, and then he got it, and it's like,
right.
Oh shit, you know, he didn't get any effects or anything, but he didn't want to get us sick and stuff, so we just ran it as a 4-piece. It's kind of like we really winged that, you know.
Well, you're talking about the House of Guitars thing you did recently?
Yeah, with with that one, yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
But that stresses me out doing a band thing. It's like there's so many components and schedules and, you know, all that stuff. And then when you're on your own, it's just me. I don't have to fucking deal with like nothing. I don't have a roadie or none of that crap, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you're doing everything yourself. So you just put out a CD called Vintage Violence, Barbaric, Crude, and Primitive, 1975 through 79. And you sent this to me, and I thank you for that very much.
Thanks. But it is on vinyl, too. That's on a record, too.
Right. It is on vinyl on Mean Disposition Records out of Spain, right? Their Barcelona label. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I got it in front of me right now. I'm looking at this. And, you know, it really, it's all pretty much 75 through 79, pre-Chesterfield Kings. The last couple of tracks are, you know, the Cut Downs band, which kind of morphed into the Chesterfield Kings. But the stuff before that, like the first 7 tracks, okay, you do an amazing version of the Pretty Things LSD, okay, and then of course there's like, you know, your Mr. Electro stuff, okay, and all I can say about the Mr. Electro stuff is you must have been like listening to LA Blues by the Stooges on repeat. Okay. All right. And you know, you were into some off the wall stuff at that point. And it's great. I mean, I like a lot of that stuff too, that, you know, free jazz, like, you know, I mean, you can hear a lot of that stuff in that, John Cage and things like that.
Yeah, Sun Ra. I was big time into Sun Ra, big time.
Sun Ra. You know, last February for Black History Month, I did a podcast on Sun Ra. And I actually sent it to the Sun Ra orchestra that still exists.
That's pretty great.
And they didn't get back to me, nothing. I was like, I was hoping to like connect with these guys in some way. But I know the guy that's still leading the band, he's like 90 or something. Do you know they still play, right?
Yeah, they have to be up there. Some of the guys got to be.
Yeah, I forget the guy's name off the top of my head, but he was in the band back when Sun Ra was leading the band, and he just kind of took over for the last 30 years since Sun Ra's gone. But he just played, you know, earlier this year, Carnegie Hall.
Wow.
Yeah, and I saw them in the late 80s, okay, like about 88, 89. And I still don't know what the hell I was watching. That show, it was
just far out, you know.
Yeah. But with this collection here of all this early material, what's great listening to it is just the progression of, you know, your Mr. Electro stuff to the Distorted Levels, okay, which is the band you had before the Kings, and then, you know, you got your Cut Downs period for a minute, and then go right into the Kings, and by the time it's the last couple of tracks, you're doing like Fortune Teller. I'm like, okay, so that's how you morphed into that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's great. I mean, are you coming out with anything else like this? Is there any more material in the vault somewhere?
I got a couple of the things, but they'll probably be like 45s. I mean, I got more tapes somewhere, but I don't know where they are. You know, I wish I could find I had 2 albums of the Mr. Electro stuff that was recorded, like John Fritsch recorded them, and he recorded it with like I can't remember if it was a real two. I think he had two tracks, and he had 4 tracks, and it was like recorded like live in the basement, but it was like better quality. But I don't know where those are. And then that 5-song EP, the Chesterfield Kings thing we did in '79 with Frank Mull playing guitar and Rick on bass and Doug on drums. We recorded it at that exterminating building, and it was phenomenal. I mean, it was like the best thing that I think that band ever recorded, and I wish we could find the tapes because it was so good. I mean,
I'm surprised you don't have them. You keep everything else, it seems.
Well, I think at the time it was on a reel-to-reel, and I was gonna. Then all of a sudden, that band changed again, and I didn't bother putting it out. So then, I think I left the tapes with one of my friends, and he died, and it either went there. So I don't know if I left it with one of my friends that died or somebody else that got it and don't know where it is, and I don't know. It's one of those things where like, oh, reel to reel, what the fuck am I gonna do with that? I don't have a player, so why don't you hang on to this? That kind of a deal.
Yeah.
That happened. So I don't know. I never thought, 30 or 40 or no, almost 50 years later, that I'd be thinking about putting this shit out,
Yeah.
But I wish maybe someday I'll find it. I don't know. I probably do have it somewhere, a copy, but I don't know. I got to
dig around.
My parents' house, that my sister still lives there, so I might go through the basement someday and look through all that crap. But I don't have the patience to do that right now.
Yeah. Now, Greg, 50 years you've been playing music almost. Okay. And
don't remind me.
Well, you just said it. That's why I'm segueing into this.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I mean, you had an amazing band, the Chesterfield Kings. I know you had your ups and downs, but I'm going to say as a fan and as a person that, knows music, I feel that the Kings were one of the most important bands of the last 40 years. And I recommend everybody to listen to them. And of course, everybody check out Greg's solo stuff. But in your book, you mentioned something, and I found it kind of very humble, a humble statement that you made. Okay. And for somebody that is a rock star in his own way.
I don't think so.
Well, you like I said, you're the ultimate fan. But you got to that level. I mean, you're not Keith Richards, but you got to that level. And the humbling statement I'm talking about is you said your philosophy of life is family, good friends, and music, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a fantastic statement. I'm not even going to ask you about it. It's just a great way that you ended your book and everything. And I just wanted to thank you for writing this book. And, just all these years of fantastic music, and just keep it up.
Oh, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
By the way, I stole that philosophy from Zach.
Yeah. Well, I got you.
Because he said it. I mean, I wish you could know him. He's a guy you should talk to. He has a band called, they're called the Low Spirits right now. And they have a single and they're doing an album. I think it's coming out in New York.
Okay.
A New York label. But anyway, Zach is a great guy. I mean, I don't know. He's a great guy. I just saw him the other day when we did that thing at the House of Guitars, and man, he's one of the most fantastic drummers. And I don't know, he's just a great guy. I love this guy.
Well, you got to connect me with him.
I will for sure. Yeah, he because their band is like, I don't know, they got a single. They're doing like the whole 66 trip. They're really like kick ass. And Ryan Moore, he was also in St. Philip's. It's 2 of the 3 guys that are in this group. And they're a 4-piece, and I'll have him hook up you and send him this, send you this stuff, But,
cool.
But anyways.
Now, Greg, what's a good way if people want to find you? I know you're on Facebook, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that's that, or like my email. I don't want to give anybody that. Fuck that. No, you find me on that SHITKICKER Rebellion page, or the only real Chesterfield Kings page. I say that because there's all these fake, fucking, lame, stupid ass pages out there with shit. That's why I did the book too, because a lot of those things are just full of shit.
Well, the subtitle at the bottom is "And the Definitive History of the Chesterfield Kings." So this is the CK Bible.
Yeah, I had to well, another thing about the band, like somebody was insinuating to do something. I go, fuck that. They're gonna have all this bullshit. I started the band, and I ended it, and I was the only guy in the band that was in it from the beginning to the end.
Right. You were the longest lasting member. Yeah.
Somebody else trying to pretend they could write a story. Well, how would they do that? Because they don't know the beginnings, and how it actually the album that Vintage Violence, it shows how it developed into that from what I was
progression
doing
of it. Right.
But anyways, that's why I did it. And plus, there's just a lot of guys that were in the band that don't get credit on the records. And a guy like Chris Hadlock, I'll name him. He's a great guy. I don't know if you saw that clip of him. He's got the helicopter and he's going, "Who is this man?" Like, I don't know if you saw it.
I don't think I did, but that's great.
When he got my book, he's holding it up and he's getting it. He has a helicopter. And he's getting ready to take off in it. And anyways, he's a great guy and a great drummer. And he was in between. He kept the band going in between the Let's Go Get Stoned and later on, and then he didn't get any kind of credit for nothing because he left the band before stuff happened, But anyways, his picture's on that Surf album. That's him on the cover, but he didn't get credit for being himself,
That's another great record. Is that Surf record?
It was a weird record. It wasn't a real thing, but it was fun doing it. And that band was the band to do it with because we weren't doing shit anyways, except sitting around our asses doing nothing, So we figured, what the fuck? Let's do this Surf thing because I went to Hawaii back then. We got to do a Surf record. Oh yeah, it's gonna blow the world away, right? It didn't matter, It didn't matter. Anyways, I don't want to keep rambling, but
no, not at all. So I just wanted to thank you for coming on.
All right.
And this was a long time coming. I appreciate it. And we're recording this right before the holidays. So I'm going to wish you and your family Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And we will be in touch very soon. And maybe you will come down to the New York City area and play at some point.
I hope so someday,
Yeah. I know it's a trip.
Send me some tranquilizers and
give you whatever you need. Or Rob will hook you up, definitely. Rob's the Dr. Feelgood of all my friends.
Well, you guys, hey, Rob, have a great Christmas, and Mike, thanks, and I guess we'll be in touch,
Yeah, definitely. And what do we say at the end of every podcast, Rob?
We don't get drunk.
We get lumped up.
Or fucked up.
That too.
All right, people, have a good one, and we'll see you next week.
I'm getting lumped up with RockerMike and Rob Rossi. I'm getting lumped up with RockerMike and Rob Rossi. Well, I'm lumped up, but I'm okay. It's gonna get lumped up anyway. You better call back the posse. Just getting lumped up with RockerMike and Rob Rossi.